Hey everyone, my name is Unathi, founder of Feedback Mastery, a leadership development organization that specializes on employee feedback. And I'm also the author of the book, Feedback: How Building a Culture of Employee Feedback in the Workplace Builds Employees that are Effective, Efficient, Innovative, and Productive. And today, as I was writing this book, actually, as I've said in a couple of videos, I went through multiple research in order to be able to understand what feedback is, and based on my 23 years of leadership experience, and also to look at what research is there to support my experience when it comes to employee feedback. So one of the things that I've one of the researches which was interesting for me that I'd like to talk to you guys about, or maybe share one of some of my learnings, in that research, was a research that was done by a Austrian psychologist called Alfred Adler. What Alfred Adler's, he had a couple of theories, okay, in his psychological studies, and a couple of them. One of them was that people essentially strive for superiority. People always strive to be the highest. People strive for more. People naturally will always strive to be better. People will have a deep sense of pursuing greatness, so that they can overcome their inferiorities. So inherently, people want to do well. People want to improve. People want more. People want more than the life that they have. That is why the world has evolved to what it is right now, and the technology is where it is right now. Is because essentially, human beings, they want to overcome inferiority. They want to overcome their weaknesses and challenges and be better. And Alfred Adler believed that people have this inherent belief, behavior in them, that is to do well and to try and do better, to overcome their inferiorities. And the second theory or belief that Alfred has was people seek for relationships. People seek to make connections. People want to make good connections, connections that feed their soul or their spirits. And also that people want communities to succeed essentially. People want themselves to do well, and they also want others to do well. They want other people not to suffer. So this was Alfred's belief, that people inherently have a desire for societal, goodness. People have an inherent desire for societal good, that societies must thrive, societies must do well. Everybody must have a fair chance of success and do well. So that is the second study, theory of Alfred Adler. And the other theory was called a subjective perception. What subjective perception is that people, let's say you got, he robbed. Okay, if you got robbed, he said that what people do is that they go through a difficult time, not because of the experience itself, but because of the interpretation that they give to themselves of the experience. So let's say if someone lost a loved one, or they had a tragedy, that it's not necessarily the tragedy that makes them go through a difficult time. It's their interpretation of the tragedy that makes them go through a difficult time. If something happens, if somebody leaves you, and then they tell themselves that I'm worthless, nobody wants me, all those things, then people, go through a difficult time or painful time because of that interpretation that they give to themselves. Not necessarily the experience itself, but the interpretation that they give to themselves. So he also believed that this was one of the reasons why people suffer. They don't suffer because of the experience itself, but because of the interpretation that they give to themselves of that specific experience. And the other theory that Alfred Adler held was the birth order. Okay, he believed that, you know birth order is essential in people's personality and in people's growth and development. He believed that people's birth order determined, how they view the world and how they made decisions about their lives. And the birth order, where you were raised, or whether you were firstborn, or secondborn, or thirdborn, whatever it is, each of those children have experienced the world differently, and they go through a world and they create perceptions of that experience, which formulate the personalities or the person they become when they grow up. And the final theory of Alfred Adler, which was the theory of lifestyle, that people are essentially their personalities. People's personalities is a combination of the experiences that they had when they grew up, or the perceptions that they created of those experiences that they had when they grew up. Those become part of your personality and the person that you become when you grow up. So if you grew up, it doesn't matter if you grew up in a happy home or in a violent home. What you interpreted that experience to be, that's going to form part of who you become, of your personality, and when you grow up. If you grew up in a poor environment, but you interpreted that in a good way, in a poor way, in a bad, in a good way, and that will form part of the personality you have. For example, I grew up in a very difficult home, in a very substance abuse home, but I vowed when I saw my dad abuse alcohol that I will never do it again. I will never touch alcohol. I will never smoke, because of what I saw my family went through, because of my dad drinking alcohol and smoking. And I told myself that I will never touch alcohol. I will never smoke, because I don't want to be that person. So I interpreted that experience that way, and somebody else might interpret it differently. So it's not necessarily what happens to us, it's what we interpret what happens to us, and that forms our personality and the people we become. Thank you.